Greetings, I'm Dr. Sean Reed, author of the Dating Toolbox, available on Amazon.com. All right, guys, so if you like what you see in here today, please hit that like and subscribe button. Today, I want to talk about controversial ways to maintain relationships. They're controversial because the things I'm going to recommend run totally counter to what psychologists recommend. And I'm going to argue that psychologists have it all wrong. Psychologists believe that relationships, the most important thing is communication, when in fact, the most important thing is love. And so I sort of want to explain today why psychologists have it wrong, why their advice usually makes relationships worse, not better. And if we look at the state of relationships, over 50% of marriages end in divorce, and many of those marriages, people that are married still aren't happy. If you look at the utter failure of modern relationships, and you got to think that, well, psychologists, if their job, if their specialty is maintaining relationships, they're doing a terrible job. And the reason is they're going about things completely wrong. Like I said, they believe it's all about communication when I argue that it's all about love. Okay, so let's unpack this explanation a little bit, and then throughout this video, I will explain to you how to actually maintain a woman's interest level, how to keep her in love. I'll tell you how to do it right. Okay, let's first examine why psychologists have it all wrong. Okay. Psychologists are driven by a political narrative, okay? And to understand that narrative, you have to understand the political nature of the academic world, which I was part of for many decades. Most psychologists are extremely liberal. In my book, I talk about this. In one study, they found that 30 out of 31 psychologists were extremely far to the left, extreme liberals. We have something known as a political ID spectrum, a scale. It runs left to right. Right being extremely conservative, of course Donald Trump's way over here on the right, and left being extremely liberal. The Democratic Party's about here. Academic psychologists are about here. Psychologists are extremely liberal, extremely far to the left. And in the academic world, they're driven by a political narrative, and that narrative is that men and women are the same. Academics operate from the belief that men and women are identical, and the reason they do so is because if we found differences in men and women, that could be an argument for men being superior and therefore sexist. So that's why all psychologists, almost all, like 30 out of 31, operate from the position that men and women, their brains are the same. And so my conclusion is that psychologists do not understand the human brain. They do not understand the female brain. If we want to understand the female brain, we really need to look at modern technology, MRI. These are all tools we use to look at the human brain, MRI, CAT scans, PET scans. And what these scientific methods have found overwhelmingly is that women are predominantly white matter. The brain is made up of white matter and it's made up of gray matter. Women use primarily white matter and men use primarily gray matter. And this is a product of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Remember, for 99.8% of our existence, we lived in tribes and caves. And so we lived a certain way. So our brains evolved. Our brains haven't really changed in the last several hundred years. So they evolved to be certain ways. I've made some videos about this topic. I'll probably do some more in the future. It's very important to understand. But because men and women operate and think differently, we have to understand how the female brain works in order to understand how to keep women in love. And again, psychologists don't believe that there's any difference in the brain. They call this neurosexism, okay? And that's why psychologists can't really help you with relationships. They don't understand how women operate, okay? If we understand how women operate, then we can start to get a solution to our relationship problems. And if we go back 20, 30,000 years, we will see that women were attracted to the male that could hunt, gather, protect, that they were attracted. So men, when, they tend to be bigger, they tend to be attracted to taller, smarter men who are courageous, who are able to hunt and to protect them. And so it wasn't like today where we have one man and one woman. Usually many women were attracted to one man, and that was how their brain evolved to operate. And of course, we've had modern institutions like religion has come along to create and rules and social and laws so that, today we have one man and one woman, but we did not evolve that way. Okay. So the bottom line with women is that the more women if multiple women find a man desirable, then that increases the chance that other women will be attracted to him. And that's the key to my solution to this problem. Okay, so let's look at this a little more closely. So how do we solve relationship problems? And generally I'm talking about long-term relationships here. Typically what happens when marriages fall apart is a woman starts to fall out of love. And men don't really understand that process or how it works. All they know is that their wife has become moody. She denies them sex. They start to argue, and that's one of the reasons why communication isn't the key here. Psychologists will argue that when you have relationship problems, the key is communication, but it's not. It's not communication. Usually communication leads to arguments. And I've made this claim over and over again. Arguments are arguably the number one destroyers of marriage. Women lose interest level, and then men start to argue. Or what they do is they start to, they see a woman isn't having sex with them anymore. She's not talking anymore. She's cut off. She's moody. She's argumentative. So what many men do is they start calling her more, start trying to solve the problem, get more involved, maybe start, getting her flowers, getting her gifts, and that only drives a woman's interest level down, and then the arguments start, and then the marriage ends, okay? That's not how to solve these problems, guys. I'm going to tell you how to solve the problem right now, okay? So when your woman starts to show low interest level, you don't need communication. What you need to do is mirror her behavior. So as she starts to show lower interest level, you need to withdraw. Withdraw from the situation, because the more you try and fix things, the worse they will get. So I argue that the way to maintain long-term relationships is you give her three things. You give her affection, you give her romance, and housework. Those three things are proven techniques to keep a woman in love, to keep a marriage strong. Okay. However, when your wife starts to withdraw from you, the solution is for you to withdraw also. And that is why a man must always be willing to walk away. The key to successful marriages is that she must love you a little bit more than you love her. And this is where I run into a lot of problems, because I got these guys posting, we got a house, we got kids, I'm terrified of what I'll lose. And so they live in fear, and you can't live like that, guys. The more you're like that, the higher the chance that the relationship will fail. The more you're like that, the more you will drive her interest level down. So this is a hard one, guy. I know, but you must always be willing to walk away. Whether you've been dating a girl for a month or you've been married for 20 years, you must always have that willingness. And I know it's hard. Let me give you some examples in my own life. Right now, my wife is moody. Okay, I've talked about this in the last few videos. My son just made it to the state wrestling championships, and we've been going to wrestling tournaments every weekend, but that's not the same as date night. We have not been doing date night. A wrestling tournament, we spend 12 hours at the tournament, we get up very early, and the day ends up with us exhausted. It doesn't end in sex. We do a date night, and the date night always has romance and ends in sex. So we've been doing these wrestling tournaments, and we haven't been doing date night. So that's part of the problem. Another one is, I know why my wife is being moody right now. okay? And communication is not going to solve this problem. What's happened is I'm kind of retired now, and now she is still, my wife's 15 years younger than me, so she's still working full-time. She works 50 hours a week, and she's working her tail off, and I'm not, and now we have some financial issues. I don't see it as a problem. The way we split up our spending is I pay for the house mortgage, and she pays for the insurance and taxes. That's the way it's been for a long time, and I paid the house off. So we live in a house with no mortgage, so I'm no longer paying the mortgage, but my wife is still paying these other bills. And I know, even though it's fair, I paid more than my share. You have to understand how women think. They don't say 2 and 2 is 4. They'll say 2 and 2 is 7. And all my wife knows is that I'm sleeping late every day. I'm working a few hours a day. I'm making videos. I'm going to the gym, and she's working her tail off. And so she's become resentful for that. I know that, so what do I do in that situation? I don't try and call her at work. I don't get her flowers. I don't reward her for bad behavior. And that's what you guys have to understand. When your wives, or if you're in a relationship, when your girlfriends start to exhibit bad behavior, you can't reward that. We punish bad behavior. So what do? We withdraw. Okay? And this is controversial. We withdraw, and if it gets worse, we have to go back to start gaming other women. We have to understand that this relationship may fail, and we must be willing to walk away. And I know that's controversial, and I know a lot of guys are going to say, but I can't. I've got a house, I've got kids. You have to be willing to do that. That's the only way to raise her interest level. Because what a woman has to understand is that you have options. The way it usually works when a marriage goes bad is a woman's interest level will drop and then become desperate, and they start doing more and more trying to save that marriage. And all that does is push her interest level down. What you have to do is you have to withdraw yourself. Okay? So with my wife, we haven't had sex in 2.5 weeks. Okay? At my age, that's not as big of a deal, but if that happened in my 40s, it would be a big deal. But it's a problem, okay? I see all these guys in sexless marriages. They've gone years without sex. They should have taken action immediately, okay? So my wife, we haven't done date night. She's become moody. We're not having sex. So what I do is I don't pursue her. I step back. And I have to operate from a mindset of there's only one parachute in a relationship. And if she's going to treat me this way, eventually I will get another woman. And I know I'm old. I'm not that good looking anymore, but I've still proven myself that I can open women. I can talk to women. I recently had a woman give me my phone number. And if my wife wants to keep escalating this, eventually what will happen is I'll file for separation papers, right? You have to be willing to do it. Now, what happens with my wife, I've been through this process a dozen times, she will come back to me. So in terms of housework, I stopped doing housework. She usually cooks for me every night. She hasn't cooked for me the last few nights, so I stopped doing housework. I usually do the dishes every day. I stopped doing that. I don't pursue her. She comes from work. She sequesters herself in a room. I don't pursue her. I don't go near her. I do not reward her bad behavior. If she takes a step back, I take a step back also. Okay? And guys, you have to understand. I know it seems crazy, and I know it seems counterintuitive, but if you do this, your chances of saving your marriage, your chances of saving your relationship increase. If you do what most guys do, if you start to pursue her, worse yet, you start to argue with her, all you'll do is drive her interest level down and she will leave you. And that is why 70% of divorces are filed by women. Okay, so again, guys, I know this stuff is controversial. This video is running long, so I'm going to wrap it up here. We, of course, can get further into this topic. I'm sure I'll do some more videos on it at a later point. If you're really interested in a more in-depth look about how to become more successful at dating, please check out my book. There's a link to it down in the comment section. If you have any questions, any comments, I'd be more than happy to answer them, guys. Again, if you like what you saw and heard today, please hit that like and subscribe button, and happy dating.